Now, tracking the presidential race, Aaron Blake in Washington. He is the managing editor of The Fix at the Washington Post and joins us now to discuss it all. Before we get to all things Donald Trump, then, Aaron, I do want to get your reaction now to the news just in that Marco Rubio is now reversing his pledge not to seek re-election. In fact, he will be in the state of Florida.
Yeah, big news for the battle for the Senate in 2016, which is kind of an undersold storyline here. The presidential race doesn't look terribly close right now, but Republicans are going to have a hard time keeping the Senate regardless of how that shapes up because the map is really difficult for them. What this is basically about is the Republican Party was not terribly happy with how its field was shaping up in this race. They know Marco Rubio is a proven fundraiser. There was a big effort to get him back in this race. And I think that, Rubio maybe, actually wanted to go into the private sector and maybe make some money, but was prevailed upon and kind of decided that maybe this was the best thing for his political future after a presidential campaign that didn't exactly go according to plan.
Meanwhile, Aaron, we do know, again, Donald Trump will be delivering a speech in which he has promised to line up Hillary Clinton in his crosshairs within the hour. She, of course, took aim at his economic policies yesterday. What do you expect by way of Trump's response today?
Well, it's going to be wide-ranging. It's going to go over a lot of territory that we've seen before, but Trump has only kind of occasionally mentioned from time to time. He's going to go personal. He's going to go after her on political issues. What's kind of interesting is he's even going to kind of attack her from the left in some ways, particularly when it comes to issues like free trade, her foreign policy, particularly when it comes to strong men in the Middle East and overseas and how she's dealt with them over the years. He's really going to kind of run through a lot of the greatest hits as far as attacks on Clinton in an effort to change the narrative of this campaign, which right now is about a campaign, Trump campaign rather, that's really in a free fall and really having a lot of difficult times. The best way to change that is to really go after her hard and to kind of start the general election anew in a way.
The free fall in so many ways is a result of self-inflicted wounds because of what the candidate himself has said, but it's also points to the discrepancy in infrastructure. Now, this is something that Donald Trump, again, with our Norah O'Donnell yesterday, made plain once again that he doesn't see any difference between what he did, he said, in the GOP primary season in New Hampshire, where he spent very little and still won, as he pointed out, in a landslide. He's also said that in calling the money that Hillary Clinton is raising blood money, that he doesn't want to spend all of his time and devote his life to fundraising on behalf of others in the party. But isn't that the job of the presumptive GOP nominee at this point in the process?
Yeah, he's basically decided that since it worked in the primary, it can also work in the general election. He had so many people, me and many others in the media included, telling him that he had no shot of winning the Republican nomination. Well, he did, and so he thinks that he doesn't need to take our advice or pay attention to the things that we said. The problem with that is Donald Trump ran a campaign that basically appealed to 25 to 30% of the population. That was good enough to win the Republican primary in a very crowded field. He's still stuck at that kind of 25, 30%. 7 in 10 Americans don't like Donald Trump at this point, in large part because of the things that he said, both in the primary campaign and since then. So this idea that he doesn't need to change it up in the general election, that he can keep running the same kind of campaign, is not only very hard for Republican leaders to hear, it also doesn't exactly square with the numbers that we see and really the expectations that are there as far as a major party presidential nominee. So, if he could do it his own way again and win in the general election, we'd probably be even more surprised than we were in the primary.
And it sets up a situation that we see playing out quite literally as we speak here, Aaron, where Paul Ryan and other GOP leaders are meeting right now. They will be set to discuss. Invariably, they will take questions about Donald Trump. We've seen Paul Ryan and other GOP leaders either refuse to take these questions altogether or condemn the comments that he's made just here in the last couple of weeks. Meanwhile, Donald Trump says that you'll see a shift in the tone in his campaign. But he also just told Norah yesterday that he'll act more presidential when the time requires it. Isn't that time now?
I would argue that it is, yes. This has been something that he's gone back and forth on for a long time. On the one hand, you get the point of view from his campaign that you need to let Donald Trump be Donald Trump. On the other hand, he's occasionally said that he would be more presidential. Almost without fail, shortly after he says that, he does something that I don't think the party or even his campaign would view as being particularly presidential. So the idea that this guy can change his spots after what we've seen in the month and a half since he secured the Republican nomination, I think remains far-fetched. We have yet to see any kind of sustained discipline from him on the campaign trail. And until we see that, it's hard to see how he's going to do that and then maintain it over the course of the more than 4 months we have left in this campaign.
Interestingly, in a piece in New York Times Magazine, the chairman of the RNC, Reince Priebus, makes a comment that Trump is Trump and the party is the party. Aaron, it does seem, especially of late, that at times Donald Trump is running against the Republican Party as much as he is as the GOP presumptive nominee against the Democrats. Meanwhile, we do see Hillary Clinton today meeting with all House Democrats on Capitol Hill, as everything else that plays out in this next hour or so will. What to make then of the optics of unity, especially as Bernie Sanders has receded a bit in the purview? What to make of the optics of unity on behalf of the Democrats?
Well, it's big for the Democrats because if they unite, Hillary Clinton's lead is only going to grow at this point. What we're seeing in the Republican Party is a total lack of unity. The way in which they talk about Donald Trump is really strained. They recognize that he's their nominee and they have to give him a certain level of support because so many of the Republican Party voted for him in the primaries. At the same time, there is a continued calculation going on among Republicans that this is a guy who could hurt them not just in the 2016 election, but for years to come. They don't want to hitch their wagon too closely to a guy who could do them long-term damage beyond this year. So it's one thing to lose the presidency in 2016, which I think the party probably recognizes is likely at this point, and the polls certainly back that up. It's another thing to wholeheartedly embrace a guy who they may come to regret in the future. And so that's why we're seeing the Republican Party not come together in a way that I expect the Democrats likely will eventually.
I want to get you out of here on this one. I know you've been following the VP selection process very closely. Is the Clinton campaign getting close to making an announcement?
Well, they have to over the next month here because that's when the Democratic convention is going to be in mid to late July. It appears that they've kind of shrunk their list down, and the names on it are actually rather unsurprising. I think if there are 3 people who maybe we thought would be on the short list, they would have been Elizabeth Warren, they would have been Tim Kaine, the senator from Virginia, and Julian Castro, cabinet secretary who used to be mayor of San Antonio. Those were kind of the logical picks. The safer picks, I would argue, for Hillary Clinton. And I think it makes a lot of sense for her to go in that direction because every indication right now is if she can kind of steady the ship, run a really solid campaign, the numbers are good for her, she can kind of expect to win the presidency as long as she doesn't mess anything up too badly. And so I think that's probably what you're going to see reflected in her vice presidential pick. At the same time, the decision here rests in the hands of one person that has proven to be unpredictable before, and so we really never know exactly what to expect from this vice presidential selection process.